Thanks for coming. This is a great turnout. Thanks for coming out. Some very powerful Sennheiser, not a sponsor, room microphones to broadcast our event this evening, which goes out over the internet through that camera and that camera. So first of all, yeah, you're being recorded and you are in this room. So if that makes you uncomfortable, I do encourage you to come to that corner and be very quiet or do your best. So that does mean that you can find us online. Check it out. But since you are under the mic and under the camera, be aware that everything you say, Mel and the rest of the internet can hear. So just a warning that the mic is super sensitive. Keep your whispers to a minimum and accept that if it comes out of your mouth, it might get published on the internet. So isn't that fun? Other fantastic housekeeping. I want to have a warm thank you, a round of applause of Ottawa and the IBM Cyber Range, which we are sitting in right now. Thank you. Fantastic partners they are. Also a big thanks. Has anybody ever done dynamic DAST testing on a web app? Has anyone ever run DAST? Surely more than one or two hands. Great. What are some tools that you use to run DAST? Zap! There you go. Well, it turns out that if you have a nice full belly because of pizza today, it's thanks to the Zap project. I'll take this opportunity. Volunteers make this possible. Great. The group does continue to keep growing. We wouldn't have these events and other events without them. There's a lot that happens behind the scenes in between the events. So thank you everybody for your help putting it together. If you'd like to come and join us, you can find us in our Slack community. Find us after this event. And there's lots of jobs that you can take on. So, did I forget anything? How about the meetup thing? Should we do the meetup thing?
Yeah, say that again.
Okay, so first of all, how many people here have never been to an OWASP monthly meetup before? I'm putting my hand up, but that is a lot. Look at that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Welcome. We'll get to you in a minute. Were you referred by a friend? Did you find us somewhere on the internet? Don't all speak at once.
Global one. Most major cities have a chapter.
So you're just in town and you found that we have...
I moved from Toronto. I used to go to the Toronto one.
Awesome. Do you know Ophelia?
I do. I used to work for her.
Well, we'll catch up later. Okay, so the global OWASP meetup network, that's awesome to hear.
By him.
Heard. For friend referral. Okay, this is great. This is the first time in months that I've asked this question and the first two answers weren't meetup. Did anybody find us from meetup today? Okay, the rest. Okay, well that's great. So we've had an on again, off again relationship with meetup. It's complicated. It's got a whole bunch of people involved. We are mostly off again, I think. And so while we are, maybe there's a new update here. The point is, we don't really know where our events are going to come together socially like Meetup going forward, but we do know that you will always find us on our GitHub page, which is github.com/Ottawa. And you can find us in our Slack community. We're working on making that easier, and if you've got great skills on pulling all this stuff together, we'd love to hear from you in the community. But all in all, Meetup's been great for us. If you found us from there, that's awesome. And now that you're here, let's make sure that we stay connected because we're not sure we're going to stay on that platform forever. Is that close enough?
Yeah, that's fine. Is it worthwhile saying why we're losing Meetup?
Goes without saying, Meetup is just money.
Well, yeah, that's it. Hey.
Do you want to take it? Do you want to take it?
So the foundation pays for it, which means they pay for over 170 chapters meetups. And late last year, the owners of Meetup, called Broken Spoons for whatever reason, they decided to triple the costs. And the foundation, which is a nonprofit, couldn't afford it. So we went through what I called then the OWASP Meetup rug pull. And so they've kept it on while people transition. So we're looking at an alternative. There's a tech.
I'm beginning to wonder if this guy's a plant. Look what he's got on his shirt.
I don't even remember.
Isn't this one of the
Can't see
other
it.
options? It's Luma.
It sounds.
No, this is a festival.
It's a festival.
Bajillion
Well, it may also be an alternative meetup.
Yeah, it's.
In any case.
Somewhere else. So we're looking at
That's
alternatives.
the fun stuff about an open source organization, right? We get to deal with this stuff all the time. In any case, we got a fantastic talk here today from our friend Rodrigo Rocha. And I'm super excited about this talk because it's near and dear to my heart because in the work that I do, I like to help people not waste a bunch of time dealing with stuff that they don't need to deal with and focus their resources on the stuff that they definitely need to deal with. And Rodrigo is here to talk a bit about threat modeling, which I consider a technique that helps to make it really easy to do both of those things. So, without further ado, I would like you to all give a warm OWASP Ottawa chapter welcome to Rodrigo Rocha.
I think it's before we start to present the topic, I think it's good to understand what is threat modeling and why threat modeling is so important for development. The original concept is created very beginning of 2000. And the idea is to create a diagram of your system, all your system, understand all the flow, data flow for each phase of your application, each component, any assets of your system, and understand for any one of these assets, what can go wrong and how you can mitigate these problems. That is the original concept for threat modeling. However, today, it's a little complicated to implement this kind of thinking in the agile model because we need to reduce the size of application for small pieces to work in the agile model. And the original concept for threat modeling don't fit in this kind of model because in theory, every time you do threat modeling, you need to look for all your system, understand all the flow, understand all the consequences of the changes and maintenance or new features in your system. So you can imagine that do all this process again in every time you do a sprint, for example, it's a lot of time consumption. So we need to understand how we can continue to use threat modeling because it's a very important tool for development, but we need to fit threat modeling in the agile model implementation. First, a little about myself. So I feel like, I don't know, I started in 1999, so back in the past. So I worked the last 80 years with application security in Brazil and spent some time here in Canada working with GRC and implementing some kind of programs. In Brazil especially, I implement some projects with SAN from OWASP and security champion programs too. Okay, so my idea is to bring to us today these 5 points. Okay, so the first one is just to present why threat model is important. The second one is why this fail. The third point is try to present some kind of model for express method. I call the express method for threat modeling. And the fourth for me is more important because I change a little how to use threat modeling and how to use another framework to do a threat modeling faster and more realistic. So, and the last one is talk a little about security champions and how to use security champions to bring to the development team threat modeling. Okay, so it's not surprise, 2017 Equifax problem, and we have a lot of exfiltration data from Equifax, and the problem was that, I don't know if this is public, but probably they don't make some threat modeling on the system. If they did in the past, it's of course they can see that the Apache strategy and can remediate this problem before implemented or before they put in production. And this problem caused $4 billion lost in revenue, was discovered 76 days before the vulnerability was discovered. And the vulnerability was a CVSS 10, was the highest score in the CVSS. So this slide shows us that threat model is so important for development. We can try to find some, here it's some misconceptions. We don't try to find vulnerabilities with threat modeling. We try to find some threats for the application, not vulnerabilities. Because by concept, if you do threat modeling, you don't have the vulnerability because you work in this probably vulnerability before start to coding, so you don't have vulnerabilities. Why threat modeling usually fail? I think it's the one of the biggest problems with threat modeling. It's we don't try to adapt threat modeling for our process. We try to use the real concept and implement threat modeling as is in your process, in our process. And most of the development teams think this is a very bureaucratic. It's a lot of friction. We need to stop all the project. We stop all the, development process to create a document with threats, with controls. So for development teams, this take time. And most of the development team don't want to take this time to do threat modeling. So this is the first point I think is a problem for threat model. We need to teach developers that threat model is important. Threat model is help developers to try to not work in a code that they need to rework, do work it again and in the future, for example. The second point is, here it's another misconception. Most developers think that security is responsibility for security teams. I'm a developer, I don't need to think about security because I have a security team. It's not true because my belief is security in general, it's a responsibility for anyone in the process. No matter if you are a developer, engineer, product owner, C-level executive, everyone involved in the process for developer is responsible for security. Okay? So the second point here. The third one is most of the frameworks we use, and one of the most used is Stride. It's a very, my opinion, my personal opinion, it's a very, how can I say, it's, I have to use a lot of imagination. I have to use my experience. For example, Stride, S in Stride is spoofing. In theory, I used to ask for my diagram. Is this possible to, I don't know, have spoofing in this process, in this asset? It's a very abstract. It's not real. It's not my problem. It's not my system. It's not my code. So most of the time, developers don't get this so close with the reality. So I stopped to use Stride, I don't know, 2017, 18. It's not new for anyone that follow OWASP, and threat model try to answer these 4 questions. The first one is, what are we building? Know your system, know your application, know your code. What can go wrong? Looking for your application, look for your code, look for your system. You know your application. You is the right person to understand what can go wrong with your system. So you have all the tools to create this kind of vision. What can go wrong with my system? What are we doing about this that can go wrong? And the last one is, did we do a good job? We can validate this. We can guarantee that this works. So most of the threat modeling methodology try to answer these 4 questions. Here it's a very, very, very basic example just to represent a system. And I try to create a healthcare portal, very basic, just to understand. This is the normal workflow for use this kind of portals. So we just need to understand how is the steps needed to work with this system. My patient login, I made an API request, I received the database data, and returned the data to the client or to the patient. Basically, it's very normal. It's a base concept for any application. We have 5 steps most of the time for threat modeling. Know your data flow. Draw your system. Understand for where and in each phase your data is used. Any row represents the data flow. Try to identify trust boundaries. Trust boundaries is everything that is outside the trust boundary, I don't have control. I can't control, for example, if my user go to fill out my authentication form with the email and password, or change the email for a sequence of letters. I don't know, I can't control this. I can limit the use of this form, but I can control what the user is doing with the application. So every asset outside of the trust boundary, I can control. I can control just what's inside of the trust boundary. If I know data flow, if I know all my assets, all my process, all my flow, all my interactions, all systems I have in my system, I can start to identify my assets. What kind of asset is this? It's a system, it's a third-party system, it's a token, it's a data, it's a database. What is my asset? Now I have my flow, my assets, and I can try to identify threats for each one of these assets. Okay? Now is the part I try to use different from Stride. Do you know CAPEC? No? CAPEC is a list of threats, real attacks from MITRE, and we can use this to cross this information because this is real. These attacks is documented. I have a list of documents describe what needs to be present in the scenario to these attacks be real. And I have a CWE for each one of these attacks. This is the key. And you know, I will show you in the next slide, because if I have all these attacks, if I have all these threats identified for each asset, I can cross with the controls in ASVS from OWASP. OWASP have a project called ASVS, Application Security Vulnerability System, if I'm not. Standards. And each control have a CWA linked to this control. So if I have a threat, and I threat have a CWE, I can use this CWE to cross with ASVS, and in the same time I have the threat and I have the control. So I just need to implement this. Okay, it's just a little example. We have a more detail here. So draw your flow, identify your assets, try to use CAPEC to identify threats, and cross these threats with ASVS to identify the controls. So in theory, before we start to work in your sprint, you have a document with the threats related with this feature or the process, and automatically using ASVS, you have the controls. You don't need to think about what I need to do, how I can mitigate this problem. The control exists. You have the control. So you just need to cross these two information, okay? So, one of the first questions I always receive when I present threat model is, what tool I can use to do a threat modeling? What tool you use to do a threat modeling? OWASP have one. OWASP have one, Threat Dragon. But what's the best tool to do a threat modeling?
Quant.
And pen. No matter what tool you use, the importance of the process for threat modeling is the list of threats and controls. The rest is just memory. It's just another task you need to do. In the end of the process, what is important is I have a threat and I have controls, and I need to implement this control. That's it. It's not so complicated. It's not so complex. Try to understand your system. Try to understand what can go wrong with your system and what I need to do to avoid this kind of problem. You have your threats, you have your controls. The same page, you have the same time. So you can go again and look for a system, example system, and now have the same process to review again your system, your feature, or any maintenance you need to do your system. So again, identify your flow, identify assets, identify your threads, cross your threads with CAPEC, and then you have your controls. 5 steps, no more than, I don't know, 30 minutes, depending of the size of your feature, your maintenance, your code, your system. 30 minutes, you can do a very good threat model for your system, or in this case, for a very small system. If you can create this kind of process in your development teams, you can scale this using, for example, security champions.
Sorry?
Security champions you can use to scale this kind of process. Okay? Everyone knows what is a security champion? No?
Security champions.
Security champions.
Oh, okay.
So, he is the
Members of the team are here to help us.
Yeah.
I will talking about the security champion the next slides. It's a very, very important part of the process for application security development programs, for example. So this is the main point for this presentation. Use CAPEC to identify real attacks for your application. Cross the CWE or CVE with ASVS, and you get the control. You don't need to think about what kind of control I need to implement. The control exists. You have all the list of controls in OWASP documentation. So, and how I can scale threat modeling? First, try to create security champions in your teams. It's the best way, because most of the time, security champion is it's not the only person that knows security, but usually is one of the developers that understand better about security, about application security. So create this kind of team. Try to create some gamification or keyword for your security team or security champion teams. My experience implementing security champions teams show me that one of the gamification that doesn't work is money. Don't try to offer high money was keyword, for example. This it's not working. It's not what usually our security champions is try to get. Most of the time, the people that work with as a security champion try to get, how can I say, it's more keywords related with knowledge, related with reconnaissance. Try to create some kind of, for example, Amazon, they create a lot of stickers. Stickers, tickets for security events, certifications, every kind of keyword that's not related with money, because it's usually this kind of gamification doesn't work. And try to measure only what is really needed. Don't try to be perfect. Don't try to be overwhelming in your measures. Try to start small. like how many vulnerabilities we have in the past, how many vulnerabilities we have now after implementing threat modeling. How long we get to discover some kind of vulnerability in the code, how many time we spend to mitigate this code. Try this kind of metrics because this can show you real progress, not only the numbers. And what can we do next? For each one of you, try to create some kind of time to speaking about threat modeling, to present threat modeling for your team. 90 minutes, 4 or 5 minutes, 30 minutes. Sometimes it's enough just to create the curiosity about threat modeling. Try to introduce the topic about threat modeling, not impose the topic of threat modeling. Try to draw a data flow with your team. Most of the team, they don't know what this threat modeling is, so they never do a threat modeling. So most of the time, they thinking about, I need a tool, I need a special knowledge, I need experience. It's not true. It's just draw, understand your flow, understand your system, understand what can go wrong. Pick one asset, only one asset, and do a threat modeling. Nominate your security champion for one team, 2 teams, but start small. One strategy for this kind of implementation is if you have a lot of teams, developing teams, choose 1 or 2, implement this process, implement threat modeling, get all metrics before implementation, implement the process, compare with the metrics before the implementation of the process. If you have success in this implementation, you have a lot of decreasing number of the vulnerability for these 2 teams. And you can get this experience and show for the rest of your team. So this kind of process can help the rest of the team change the mindset. That is one of the biggest problems for development teams. Why I need to change right now what I'm doing for the last 10 years? Why? And you need to prove that. You need to prove that this kind of new process can help them with this kind of solution. One question we receive when we present some threat modeling process is how long my process will be before the implementation of threat modeling process. This can impact in my time. By experience, I can say that the threat modeling process don't have any impact in your time, because the time you are saving planning, doing a threat modeling, you don't spend this time correcting or mitigate vulnerability after the code is in production. So you can save all this time with threat modeling. So guys, the presentation is not so big, so long, that not so complex, because threat model is not complex. Threat model is very simple. Just asking, just do. No, we don't have any right threat modeling, wrong threat modeling. We have threat modeling or don't have threat modeling. Okay? So, Start with one data flow, dry your data flow, try one thread, and repeat the process. Every time, every sprint. Small. You don't need it to create all the workflow for the flow for your data. You don't need it to draw all your system. You have to draw small parts, start small, create the process, do the process, and repeat. Okay? So, talking about threat modeling is so simple like this presentation. It's 25 slides, 25 minutes, 30 minutes, and that is the time we need to create a threat modeling process. It's not complex. That's it. So that is the process.
That was fantastic. I have questions, but I'm sure there may be questions from the floor, or perhaps online. If you're watching online and you have some questions, get them into the chat box. Here it happens. Lots of hands up. I'm going to start here.
You mentioned metrics before and after. What type of metrics?
What kind of metrics?
Like, can you give examples?
Yes, for example, if you have, to answer this question, we need to step back and understand the concept for threat modeling. Threat modeling was created to do threat modeling before we create your code, okay? So if you do before you create your code, you don't have a lot of metrics. It's not the real world today. We have a lot of code. So what my experience had said about metrics, especially vulnerability numbers, time to discover this vulnerability, and time to correct or mitigate this vulnerability. These three metrics is one of the most important metrics you can use. Metrics is only important if you have metrics before and metrics after and before any kind of usage, for example, in this case, threat modeling. So you have to create your metrics before your presentation, before your process, after your process and before your process, to make a comparison and understand if your process is in progress or not.
So like you're talking about like metrics, like you mentioned like the vulnerability management process metrics. That's like one thing, maybe incidents as well, or?
Yes and no at the same time, because vulnerability management process, it's not working the same way that threat modeling. Threat modeling occurs before all the process. Threat modeling, in theory, you have to do threat modeling design phase of the application. And vulnerability management, it's a process after your system is in production. So you have vulnerability management, you have a vulnerability. You need to understand what's happening to correct it before. Threat modeling, you try to avoid this vulnerability.
If you do have the vulnerability, you understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm interested in your experience in incentivizing developers to think about security in general, I guess, and threat modeling. I think it was the slide that showed all the different incentives. You mentioned that money does not work. I'm kind of curious why. Well, can you expand on what kind of experiments you did?
We did a lot of experiments with security teams in Brazil in the past, and one of the keywords that doesn't work is money. They lost interest about security very fast when you put money in the process.
And so when you say put money in the process, you mean, if you find a vulnerability or something, you'll get $50 or something?
Just like this, but if you have, I don't know, 2 teams and you have 2 security champions, you can increase the salary for these security champions or pay a percentage more for this kind of work. This kind of solution, this kind of gamification, did not work. It's not, security champion in general is not try to achieve this kind of reward, you know? So they are most interested in knowledge and understand the problems and fix the problems. So if you just pay more for be a security champion, first you will choose the wrong person because this person is just interested in money and not in the security. And probably you lose your money and time with the wrong person in the security champion teams. Try to think something like security event tickets, t-shirts, what else? Stickers.
Day off. Day off.
Day off. We never tried this in Brazil, but
Because I have one problem. I have 3 analysts level 2. They work with hour by day. They know your work, how need make your work. But when I start to security champions, they are not really motivated. They work every day with hour, but they will do similar thing in security champion. For them it is similar, but for me it isn't similar because they will new challenge, new problems. But I don't know. With money it isn't work. I try with money it isn't work, but I don't know how I will motivate.
try to implement. Oh my God, I forget the name of. Body jump. Sorry, body jump is how is the name? That's the process for try to find vulnerability and present this vulnerability.
Bounty.
Sorry.
Bug bounty.
Yeah. So try to implement this kind of, OWASP have a lot of resource for do this. We can use, for example, JUICE, OWASP JUICE to implement this kind of solution. Try to maintain your security champion active, learning, practice. So try to implement a training process, and the instructors is your security team. So they need to start to study, they need to start to create examples, they need to start to create content and material to the training. So most of the time, these kind of things, they motivate more than money.
I just want to add to that. I've used CTFs and Juice Shop in developer environments, and the look on the face of particular developers when they popped their first database, it was the same look my son had when he rode his bicycle for the first time alone.
Yeah.
And we knew we had him at that point in time. And that curiosity, we essentially just used that pure curiosity of building that superpower and learning to guide them into a security champion system.
Yeah, we just need to be careful because most of the developers think that application security is to exploit a system. It's not true because application security is try to avoid vulnerability. So we need to understand that it's a step before the application. So we need to understand that security champions, they have to learn about how to avoid weakness in the code, not to exploit the code. Exploit the code it's another team, it's a pen testing, penetration testing. Developers try to avoid this kind of problem. And when we present this kind of solution like a OWASP CTF tool, and Juice, it's one of this, we can pass the wrong message for the developers. We can pass the message that your job is to exploit the application, is to break the application. It's not true. Your goal is to understand what is happening and try to avoid this to happen. For example, SQL injection. Everyone know what's SQL injection, okay? Most of the example, it's 1 equals 1, correct? I hear a lot from the developers. So I just need to put a if 1 is equal 1, it's finished. They don't. I can ask you for anyone, the developers here, so you put some limits in your password field in an authentication form. Developers will raise their hands and say proudly, yes, just 3 times. My next question is, and your username. How many times I can write wrong my username? They look me with some strange face and ask me why. Because statistically, I can fix a username and try password, and the contrary is true too. I can fix a password and try a lot of usernames. It's the same principle. It's threat modeling. It's threat modeling. Okay?
I wanted to ask if I can have.
Go for it. Yeah, you got it.
I wanted to ask if you had any experience with AI-powered threat modeling tools, and if so, what your experience or impression is.
Yeah, I'm trying to create one. It's a very good, especially if you teach him when to find some kind of information. For example, I use CAPEC and I use ASVS. And my simple application, it's local application, I can draw in a scale draw or any draw tool. I can draw the graph, the diagram, put this image, put description, what this happened, this is schematics in this draw, and the agent try to understand the schematics, the design of this application, read the description, go to CAPEC, read all this section related with this kind of problem, and cross this information with ASVS and give me the answer with this control. I don't know how many controls they have to present me. It's not so complicated, but I think it's threat modeling using AI. It's not right in this moment. It's not the right solution for threat modeling in this moment, because I think it's threat modeling is more, it's contrary, I said in a few slides before, but threat modeling is more like I can use my experience. I can use my creativity to think about this kind of problem. For example, this one about the authentication process. It's not AI solution thinking like hey man, statistically 2 persons can have the same password, so I can fix the password and I can try the username. AI don't think like this. AI don't think like this solution. So for a very limited scenario, I think AI is very good. But for complex systems, I think the better is paper and pen and humans.
I wonder about the, what the impact of using AI for threat modeling is on the quality of the development process overall. Because I think what I'm hearing is that if we, as development teams, can build this muscle of thinking around the threat model, then we're going to build better software.
Yeah.
If we just have AI spitting out tickets to us of the threats that it's found, we might not have the same relationship with the code.
Yeah, and you can have, for example, AI work with humans side by side, and I can teach AI how to think threat modeling. And each interaction, I can feed more the AI with more information, with more scenarios. How I think about this problem and how I get the solution for this problem, I can feed the AI. So this kind of interaction can be a very positive impact in the AI in threat modeling. But just AI, I think it's too early to say just AI can fix the problem for threat modeling. I don't know.
Do we have any questions from the internet? We've got a couple more in the room.
We have one here. I should ask.
We're covered.
Yeah, I have a question. I don't know if you saw there was a thread in OWASP threat modeling channel that was very interesting. I mean, it's AI related, but from a different angle. So it looks like you haven't seen it, but so the idea it goes the following. If right now agentic AI takes over development significantly, so that most of the code is being written by AI, essentially, shouldn't we place, so instead of security champions and like training developers and all that, shouldn't there be a person like trained fully in threat modeling, just working over this AI generated code rather than having developers sort of kind of managing this? Because if AI is writing the code, all you need essentially is a person supervising AI and not somebody supervising developers.
Yeah, I try to use AI, especially for code, just as a tool, not more than that. So what I mean with this, imagine that you have a junior developer in your side. You have to teach him how to create code, how to document code, how to read a code. AI, at this moment, for me, it's a junior developer. So I don't know if he use, but in my case, it's before I send AI create any line of code, I create PRD and a SDD file. Do you know what's a SDD PRD file? PRD, it's a document where you explain what the system is or the feature is in details. And SDD is for design. And you explain the technology, the usage, you can send some examples of the code. And the AI use these two files and create the application, and you review the code. So I think today, using AI to create all the code, I don't know. I don't trust.
The question comes down to like who's hitting who's approving the PR essentially in that world?
Yeah,
When you're suggesting.
I mean, I'm not an expert in threat modeling, and it's not my opinion, but in the thread, there were people kind of quite known in the field. And the question was basically, should the threat modeling manifest be rewritten in a way, because right now what we have is a development-centric model where we have security champions and we say you need to go and kind of try to, what you were saying, try to make those development teams sort of be security aware and all those things. But if we come from perspective that AI does most of the heavy lifting, then the focus now shifts to sort of creating those documents for AI rather than for developers. So that's essentially the argument here.
but at the end of the day, someone, human, have to read the code and approve the code.
For now, anyway.
Yeah, for now.
We have time for a couple more questions. Any more questions in the room or on the internet? Got one here.
Yeah, you talked about small features and taking 30 minutes, everything small, but what if you have a large system where threat modeling's never been done before? That would be a much bigger job, I think, and where would you start?
You know, threat modeling was created to work with waterfall process. And in waterfall process, you have all system in one time. So it's easiest to create this kind of threat modeling when you have all the system. So today it's not real because today we use agile methodology. We create in phases. And one of the misconception, I think, it's developers think that agile process don't talk with traditional development process, SDLC. But it's not real. Agile process have the same phases of SDLC, but it's small. For example, when you start your sprint and you're talking about the feature you are creating, that moment is a design phase of process. It's the same as DLLC. So it's the same. When you start to implement, it's the same phase of implementation for the original process. So using threat modeling in a waterfall model or in an agile model, the concept is the same. You need to understand your system. You need to understand what can go wrong with your system and how to fix this. It's the same. No matter if your system is too complex or it's an authentication process. It's the same process.
So is the answer just start somewhere, anywhere?
Start. Just start.
Is that satisfying?
It says up there, actually.
Yeah, just start. You know, it's one of my last trainings in Brazil. We use a house of example, just to prove that threat modeling is not just for code. We use a house. You are building your house. Do a threat modeling for your house. It's the same principle, it's the same concept. Know your system, know your house. What can go wrong with this house? And how I can avoid these problems? It's the same. So just start. Make the first draw. Mark the first flow and start to do this kind of questions for your draw.
Or with gas leak or something.
But But maybe to that point, like if you've got a hunch on a part of the system that is more interesting or more exposed or riskier, in fact, a question that I had was, how do you see the relationship between like the post-mortem process or like the end of an incident and threat modeling? Like, is there an opportunity to take something that has actually happened and then kind of apply a threat modeling approach to learn further from that? I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, you know, it's I think it's one of the problems with threat modeling. It's simple, but it's complex at the same time. Why it's simple? Because I just need to understand a system, what can go wrong, and how to fix. It's very simple. Answer these 3 questions, and you have a threat model. It's complex because most of the people think that a threat model needs to occur in each phase of development. No. Threat model is the beginning of the process. Before you write at the first line of your code, you have a threat model. Threat model is so important in the process. The end of the process of the threat model, you have a list of controls, threats and controls. I can use this threat and controls in another phase of the process when I need to test my application. I can get this list, look for this list and say, in the beginning of the process, I identify this threat and implement this control. Is it correct? I don't know. Let's go on a test. And you can create tests to validate all the threat you find. So threat modeling can be used in 2 phases. And for example, for post-mortem problem, if I find a problem in my test phase or in production phase, I can look back for my threat modeling documentation and see, I identified this threat before or not. If I identify this threat before, I can ask it again.
Control.
Why this control was not working if I identified this threat before the code? Implementation problem, a new solution, a creative solution by attacker to bypass this control. What's happening? So with one threat modeling, I can do a threat modeling, a test in a post-mortem. I think it's a threat model is very important for the process.
One more question. Oh, we got 2 more questions. 2 more questions.
Okay, using the house as a model, consider a house that has a doggy door, and then there's some security incidents in the kitchen and you don't know why, and somebody puts up a camera and discovers that the doggy has brought home 3 friends, all raccoons. And that's how they get into the fridge and make a mess.
I can.
That sounds like experience.
It was a video on YouTube. On my wife.
I can use this example in 2 situations. For example, it's not new for anyone here. It's Canada is safer than Brazil. Okay. To start, you don't have walls surround your houses here. In Brazil, we have. And sometimes we have walls and electrical fence. Okay? One guy tried to rob this house. It's a real, okay? It's a real event. They tried to rob this house, but the house have this kind of electrical fence. What they did, they start to action to enable the alarm from the electrical fence. And the owner of the house goes and say, looking for nothing's happened, go inside the house, go to sleep. Again, the guys go, again, action, activate the electrical fence, back, the owner again, 2, 3, 4, 10 times. The 11th time, the owner goes to electrical fence system and shut down. Okay? So this is threat modeling. What's the second level of protection if you don't have your electrical fence? What's the second level of protection in your system in your threat modeling process? Another example here, for example, here in Canada. All houses here have the fire alarm with a very strong strobe light, right? And the beginning of this year, one of my sensors start in action, and they enable all the rest of the sensor of the house. 4 of them are 4 a.m. You wake up very fast, all dark. The light is very, very, very strong. The sound is very strong. You are a little fuzzy. I can be down off the sensor and turn off the sensor. Anyone see this happening in the completely dark? The sensor starting and just with the very strong strobe light? It's hallucinating. I can be stand. If my home it's fire, probably I have a lot of problems to leave my house because I have disorientation in the process. So it's a threat modeling. What can go wrong with this system? The same principle.
I do a bit of threat modeling, and I've seen probably mostly in Canada, not really anywhere else. Organizations are kind of following that slide you had before, you know, to not have threat modeling be a security-driven process, but rather with the devs. But in the Canadian context, I'm noticing a trend towards architects owning the threat modeling. I want to know if you've seen that, and if so, what your thoughts are.
Usually, most of the people when implement threat modeling, they implement to engineers do the threat modeling. I don't believe engineers doing threat modeling alone. I prefer to threat modeling doing by engineers and developers. At the end of the day, developers need to know what they are doing with the code and why they are implementing some kind of control. So all my projects to implement threat modeling in the development process in the past, I try to implement with engineers and developers teams because it's developers is the real person that customize the code, to create the code. So they need to understand what's happening with the system. For example, we get a project for implement best practices in a company that creates systems, and one of the standards they implement in the systems was a PCI DSS. And one of the trainings about PCI in this company, I asked for the developer team and engineering team, who here read PCI standard? Anyone? Anyone read the PCI standard? They just get the document from the engineer with the requirements, think about the code, and implement the code. But they don't know why they're implementing this. They don't know what is this requirement came from. They just implement. So it's the same principle. If you just do threat modeling with your engineering team and pass this requirement for developers, maybe this can work. Maybe not, because I continue to implement something that I don't understand. So I don't know why I'm doing with this kind of requirements and why I'm doing this. So I think it's a good idea to implement threat modeling with developers included in this process.
And I don't disagree. I'm just wondering if you've seen architects play a role
No,
at all?
no.
Okay.
Well, they should. Yeah. It should start at the architecture level. So for example, you have a web application that uses an API. If an API is only solely needs to be used internally, you have, let's say, a distributed system, well, it should not be exposed outside.
It's one of the big problems for security. It's a different topic for threat modeling, but it's related. One of the big problems for security, application security specifically, web application security more specifically, the problem is most of the time is not external entities or attackers. It's internal. Here, a real attack for internal. So most of the time, we tend to think like, if the system is internal, I don't need to think about security, how so strong like I think about my border or my exposed system. It's not real because most of the problem is internal, not external.
Do you think it's possible to work engineers in security with developers? Because when I work in my infrastructure, I work in different infrastructure. When I show for developers that we have very big problem, developers it just go finish your project. They don't think the developers who I saw, they don't think about security. It isn't your problem. But what I think it is more interesting have developers and have engineers for control developers. But developers who I know, they never thought about security. It isn't your problem. For example, I have one application, the explosion API, sorry, I have French accent. The explosion API in the web. I indicate that problem. They don't correct that problem. You understand? For it, if application work, after all the thing, it is not your problem.
Yeah, it's the same concept for if it works, don't mess with this.
Exactly.
Reminds of the definition of work, right?
Yeah, in my machine it's work.
Yes, yes.
So don't mess with this. But I think it's most of the time we don't know what we don't know. So if you don't test, if you don't make threat modeling, you even don't know if this API have a problem. So
I'd also like to add that it would be best taken by the developers if you put it in terms of business impact. So if you tell them that you're going to lose this much money or something like that, then they'll be more convinced to fix it. So at the end of the day, it's more of a communication problem than anything else. Because we technically, as cybersecurity professionals, usually try to go as in-depth with the technicals of whether this API is exposed or not. And then they'll just brush it off because they don't know the business impact. But if you can show them the business impact, and especially the stakeholders that actually run the business, and if you could demonstrate in one single line, I think it'll be more helpful than trying to convince them to get. Yeah.
If the devs can't be convinced, the product managers certainly can. And
Yeah.
they're the one to control their time.
yeah.
That's where you go. So
I think it's one of the parts of this kind of problem and solution at the same time is understand the risk. Most of the developers and architects, they don't understand the risk. For example, SQL injection, again, as an example. Most of the developers don't understand the risk of SQL injection. They understand the impact, what can go wrong, how can I execute this and extract information from the database, but they don't understand the risk with this.
What it means for the business.
Yeah, especially for the business.
And sometimes it is not your problem, because for me,
No, it's the problem is that all related with the application development have the responsibility about security. It's my part of the process. If I'm developer of this kind of solution, it's my responsibility to understand what can go wrong and what the risk is involved in this process. How can I put some, I don't know, perspectives over this application if I don't understand the risk? For example, you have two systems, okay? One system is to manage financial accounts, okay? A bank system. In the same bank, you have a second system. And this second system is just to control doors and badges for open this door, okay? You have, this first system have a medium vulnerability. And the second system have very high vulnerability. If you just look for the criticity of the vulnerability, your first idea is to correct the second system because it's higher. But you need to look for the business. What's most important for the business? The system that controls the doors or the system that controls the financial account? So the risk is important, and threat modeling can help you with this because you need to understand, remember, you need to understand what your system do. And understand what your system do, you need to understand how important is your system in all the scenario of your business. So you need to understand your system and the risk of your system.
We have one last question and then we're going to wrap up.
Most organizations, they're rushing to AI, agentic AI, and so on, right? How would threat modeling, like, would you be using the same methodologies that you're using now, like for threat modeling? I understand OWASP right now, they have their top 10 for AI and so on. Would like CAPEC or some other model would be able to assist to do the threat modeling for that?
For AI systems?
Yeah, like for example, yeah, like so many projects like.
Yeah, I have no experience doing threat modeling for AI systems.
Or some sort of thing.
It's a good question though, like as you're designing AI.
I know they have a lot of, I know that they have a lot of controls for AI systems and AI chatbots, but personally, I never did some threat modeling for AI systems.
But if you could threat model a house.
Yeah, you can try to, you know, EFF, Electronic Frontier Foundation, they have a web page specifically about threat modeling for journalists, how to protect data, not related with technology, developer, nothing. It's just how to understand your laptop or your device, threats, and how to protect your device. So threat modeling can be used for a lot of things.
MIT has a great risk taxonomy for AI that might help.
Stanford launched a document, if I'm not wrong, last week about security in AI systems.
Sorry?
Stanford.
Yeah. Okay, all right. I'll take a look. So there's not like a global standard yet, like.
There's two, and there'll be three next week, and then six.
I think there's the NIST.
NIST has one.
Yeah, I'm using the NIST one.
800, one.
There's the NIST risk management framework.
153.
ISO 42001,
yes.
Both at the governance level, but then they tie into like the pool and some of these risk taxonomies and controls. 42001 does have some suggested controls inside it as well, but it's a very new space. But I love the idea of applying threat modeling to it.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Security Alliance
CSA has
NCF.
something called MITRE, which some people are reaching out to. I know there's another one we work with, but called Phantom B. putting out a white paper on it, but
And what are these?
That's Phantom Beat.
it's basically like Stride for AI.
I don't like,
It's not me, it's
I don't like Stride.
smarter than me.
Yeah, but that's one point, actually, the CAPEC, they have like 600 stuff there.
Yeah, but still, we have
Like, how would you map it?
categories. You have a lot of categories. For example,
okay.
if I'm doing the threat modeling for authentication, you have a category for authentication.
Oh, okay.
And you can
category.
filter all the attacks for authentication.
Folks, we did it again, another monthly meetup with a great talk from Rodrigo. Thank you very much. Arranged for giving us a roof over our heads and cameras and mics and screens for today. Thank you to Zap for the pizza. And thank you to all of you for coming out. We typically host these on the third Wednesday of every month. I expect you will see us in this building, whether it's here or on the main floor, again on the third Wednesday of next month. Please find us on the places where you can find us. Tell your friends, as it turns out lots of people are doing. And we really look forward to seeing you back here in the community again. Thank you.